Humans withdraw from diplomacy, throwing the Galactic Council into panic. Part 1. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council shimmered under the soft glow of twin suns filtering through crystalline arches. Delegates from over 200 species filled the amphitheater, their voices rising and falling like tides in a sea of disagreement. Some communicated through clicks and hums, others through scent or light pulses, but all understood the common tongue of diplomacy, until now. At the far end of the chamber, where the human delegation once sat, there was only silence. Empty chairs. No comm signals, no replies to urgent hails, just silence. Counselor Vrel of the Cathari shifted uneasily in his segmented exosuit. His 4 eyes flicked toward the vacant human section again. 17 standard cycles had passed since the last message from Earth. 17 cycles of radio quiet, of unanswered proposals, of ignored emergency protocols. Most of the council dismissed it as another human quirk. Humans were strange that way, prone to sudden retreats, long silences, then bursts of action no one saw coming. But Vrel had spent decades negotiating with them. He knew their silence was never empty. It was full of meaning. On Earth, far from the polished floors of Xylos Prime, the air in the underground command center beneath Cheyenne Mountain was cool and still. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead as President Daniel Hartley stood before a wall of live feeds showing every major off-world colony, every allied station, every listening post stretching into the outer rim. His face was calm, but his hands were clasped tightly behind his back. He had made his decision. Now he only had to live with it. Secretary of Interstellar Affairs Lena Ortiz stood to his left, arms crossed, her expression tight with worry. She had argued for days against this move. "We can't just vanish," she had said. "The galaxy depends on us as mediators. Without us, the fragile peace collapses." But Hartley had listened, nodded, and said nothing. He knew she was right. But he also knew something deeper. Defense Coordinator Marcus Boone stood to his right, silent as stone. Unlike Ortiz, Boone had not argued. He understood what Hartley was doing. For 50 years, humanity had bent over backward to explain its values to species that saw mercy as weakness and restraint as fear. They had shared technology, opened trade, roots, saved dying worlds, and in return they were treated as naive children playing at politics. Enough was enough. Hartley turned from the screens and walked slowly to the center of the room. He picked up a small data chip from the table and inserted it into the command console. A soft chime echoed through the chamber. On every screen, red letters appeared. Executive Order 734. Full withdrawal initiated. Ortiz took a step forward. "Sir, once this goes live, there's no going back. The Council will panic. Trade will freeze. Some might even see this as an act of war." Hartley looked at her, his eyes steady. "Let them panic. Let them freeze. Let them wonder why we walked away. Maybe then they'll finally understand that peace isn't something you negotiate when it's convenient. It's something you build when you're ready to respect it." Boone finally spoke, his voice low. "The fleet is already standing down. All diplomatic outposts have been ordered to power down transponders and return to neutral status. No flags, no signals, just silence." Hartley nodded. "Good. We're not leaving the galaxy. We're just stepping out of the noise." Back on Xylos Prime, the council session dragged on. A Sithari delegate demanded emergency sanctions against the Morellians over disputed mining rights. The Morellians fired back with accusations of sabotage. Voices rose. Tempers flared. Vrel watched it all, his mind elsewhere. He tapped a command into his wristband and pulled up the last known transmission from Earth. It was a routine weather update from a civilian outpost near Proxima Centauri. Boring, mundane, utterly human. No hidden codes, no warnings. Just clouds and wind speeds. That was what unsettled him most. Humans didn't vanish without reason. They didn't abandon their posts without cause. If they were going silent, it meant they had already decided the conversation was over. In a quiet corner of the chamber, a young Orlani aide whispered to her superior, "Do you think they're preparing something?" The elder Orlani shook her head slowly. No. If humans were preparing something, we would already be dead, or saved. Their silence means they've given up on us, Vrel overheard. He didn't correct her, because deep down he feared she was right. Meanwhile, on the orbital habitat Aurora station, civilian engineer Chloe Bennett sipped lukewarm coffee as she reviewed the latest comms logs. All human channels were dark. No chatter from freighters, no maintenance updates from relay stations. Even the usual background noise from Earth's deep space arrays had gone quiet. She frowned and ran a diagnostic. Nothing broken, just off. She called up retired Ambassador Raymond Cole on a private channel. His face appeared on her screen, lined with age but sharp as ever. "You seeing this too?" she asked. Cole nodded. "I've been expecting it. Earth's been stretched thin for years, trying to hold together a galaxy that won't hold itself. They've reached their limit." "Do you think they'll come back?" Chloe asked. Cole smiled faintly. "Humans don't run away. They step back to see the whole picture. And when they step back in, well, let's just say the galaxy better be ready." Chloe looked out the viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth was watching, waiting, and saying nothing. In the council chamber, the debate raged on, louder and more chaotic than ever. No one noticed the empty human seats anymore. They were too busy fighting over scraps of power, unaware that the one species that could have stopped the slide into chaos had already turned off the lights and walked out the door. And on Earth, in a small town in Montana, high school teacher Natalie Ruiz stood before her class and said, "Today we talk about responsibility, not just to each other but to the future." Her students listened, unaware that their world had just changed the fate of 1,000 others by choosing, for the first time in decades, to say nothing at all. Humans withdraw from diplomacy, throwing the Galactic Council into panic. Part 2. News of humanity's silence spread faster than any ship could fly. At first it was just a rumor whispered between traders at the edge of the Orion Exchange. Then it became a confirmed alert from the Galactic Council's central registry. Within days, it was all anyone talked about. Human freighters stopped answering hails. Their trade routes emptied. Their relay stations went dark. Even their cultural broadcasts, those strange dramas and music streams that so many alien youths had secretly loved, vanished from the public feeds. On the Zenthari homeworld of Corrales, panic set in quickly. The Zenthari were a gentle species, tall and slender with skin that shifted color with their emotions. For years, they had relied on human-made atmospheric processors to stabilize their fragile biosphere. Without regular maintenance updates and replacement parts from Earth, their skies began to cloud over. Acid rains fell on 3 of their colony worlds. Crops withered. The Zenthari High Council sent dozens of messages to Earth. None were answered. In the Drath Collective's war chambers, the reaction was different. The Drath were reptilian, armored in thick scales and bred for conquest. Their leader, Warlord Kor, saw Earth's withdrawal not as a retreat but as a sign of weakness. He gathered his generals around a holographic star map and pointed a clawed finger toward the Perseus arm. "The humans are gone," he growled. "Their allies are exposed. Now is the time to strike." Back on Earth, life continued as if nothing had changed. Markets opened. Children went to school. Farmers planted their fields. But beneath the surface, a quiet shift was underway. Civilian shipyards in orbit around Luna halted production of luxury cruisers and began assembling modular habitat units. Universities quietly expanded their astrophysics departments. Recruitment centers for the Interstellar Civil Corps saw their highest enrollment in a decade. No one announced it. No one needed to. Everyone understood. On Aurora Station, Chloe Bennett watched the comms traffic dwindle to almost nothing. She had spent the last week running diagnostics, checking for system errors, even testing old backup channels. Nothing worked. Earth was truly silent. She sat in her small quarters, staring at a photo of her younger brother, who served on a medical frigate near the Helios Rift. He hadn't responded to her last message. She didn't know if he was safe or if his ship had even received it. She decided to call Raymond Cole again. This time he answered on the first ring. His face looked tired. "You feel it too, don't you?" he said, not as a question but as a statement. Chloe nodded. "It's like the whole galaxy is holding its breath." Cole leaned closer to the screen. The humans didn't just leave diplomacy. They left the illusion that the galaxy was ready for peace. Now everyone has to face the truth. Before Chloe could respond, an alert flashed on her console. A Cathari surveillance drone had pinged her station's outer sensors. It wasn't hostile, just watching. She frowned. "They're spying on us." "Of course they are," Cole said. "They're scared. And when scared beings don't understand something, they assume the worst." He was right. On Xylos Prime, rumors swirled that Earth was building secret weapons, that they had abandoned diplomacy to prepare for total war, that their silence was the calm before a storm no one could survive. Counselor Vrel tried to calm the fears, but even he was starting to doubt. Why would humans cut all ties so cleanly unless they were planning something? Meanwhile, on a remote asteroid mining outpost near the edge of human space, engineer Jake Morrison powered down the last of the diplomatic transponders. His orders were clear: deactivate all non-essential systems, seal the station, and await further instructions. He had served as a liaison between human miners and the Sithari traders for years. Now he packed his gear, erased the station's logs, and boarded a small shuttle bound for Mars. As he left, he looked back at the darkened station. It felt wrong to abandon it. But orders were orders. He didn't know it yet, but his shuttle carried more than just personal belongings. Hidden in a sealed compartment beneath the cargo bay was a prototype navigation core, one that could bypass standard jump restrictions. Earth wasn't just withdrawing, it was preparing to move unseen. On Corrales, the Zenthari High Minister addressed her people in a trembling voice. "We must find a way to repair the processors ourselves," she said. "If Earth will not help us, we must learn to help each other." Her words inspired hope, but the truth was grim. Without human schematics, the machines were impossible to fix. Their world was slowly choking. In the Drath war chambers, Warlord Corps gave the final order. Fleets mobilized. Engines roared to life. Thousands of warships began their slow crawl toward the Cathari border. The Drath believed the Cathari would be defenseless without human peacekeepers. They were wrong, but they would not learn that until it was too late. Back on Earth, President Hartley walked alone through a quiet park in Denver. Trees swayed in the breeze. Birds sang. Children laughed in the distance. He stopped by a bench and sat down, watching a father teach his daughter how to ride a bike. She wobbled, fell, got back up, and tried again. Hartley smiled. That was humanity in a nutshell: stubborn, resilient, and always willing to try again. He knew the galaxy was falling apart without them, but he also knew that true peace could not be handed out like charity. It had to be earned, and sometimes the only way to teach that lesson was to walk away. On Aurora Station, Chloe sent one last message into the void, addressed to no one and everyone. "We're still here. We're just waiting for you to grow up." She didn't expect a reply. She didn't get one. But somewhere in the endless dark between stars, a single automated relay station received her words, logged them, and stored them away, just in case someone someday needed to remember what humanity stood for before it went silent. Humans withdraw from diplomacy, throwing the Galactic Council into panic. Part 3: Without Human Mediators. The fragile peace that had held the galaxy together for decades began to unravel like old thread. Disputes that had once been settled over shared meals and translated jokes now turned into shouting matches in the council chamber. The Sithari and Morellians, long at odds over mineral rights in the Helios Rift, stopped talking altogether. Within weeks, their patrol ships exchanged fire near a contested asteroid field. No one intervened. No human envoy arrived to calm tensions or propose a compromise. For the first time in memory, the galaxy was truly on its own. Counselor Vrel watched it happen from his private quarters on Xylos Prime. He had spent his entire career believing in diplomacy, in dialogue, in the slow but steady work of building trust. Now that trust was crumbling before his eyes. He tried to rally support for a new peace initiative, but the other council members were too busy protecting their own interests. The Orlani, a peaceful species known for their healing arts, sent desperate pleas for help, but no one answered. They had relied on human escorts to travel safely between systems. Now their unarmed vessels were easy targets for raiders and opportunists. Vrel finally called for an emergency session. He stood before the full council and proposed sending a delegation to Earth, not to demand answers, but to listen. "We cannot solve our problems by pretending humanity does not exist," he said. "They walked away because they lost faith in us. The only way to bring them back is to prove they were wrong to lose it." But his words fell on deaf ears. The Drath representative scoffed openly. "Why beg for help from a species that abandoned its duties?" Others nodded in agreement. Fear had turned into resentment. Instead of reflecting on their own failures, many chose to blame Earth for leaving. The motion to send a delegation was voted down. On Earth, life moved forward in quiet rhythm. In Montana, high school teacher Natalie Ruiz stood before her class and spoke about responsibility. She did not mention the galaxy or the council or the wars starting far beyond the stars. She spoke simply about doing what is right even when no one is watching. Her students listened, some taking notes, others staring out the window at the open sky. One boy raised his hand and asked, "What if doing the right thing means walking away?" Natalie smiled. "Then you walk," she said. "But you make sure you're walking toward something better, not just running from what's broken." Her words were recorded by a student on a handheld device. Later that night, the clip was uploaded to a public feed. Within hours, it spread across Earth's networks. Within days, it reached off-world servers still connected to civilian channels. On Aurora Station, Chloe Bennett watched it twice. She showed it to Raymond Cole during their next call. He said nothing for a long time. Then he whispered, "That's it. That's the message they're sending without saying a word." Back on Xylos Prime, the council descended into chaos. With no neutral party to mediate, old grudges resurfaced. Trade agreements collapsed. Embargoes were declared. The Cathari closed their borders. The Sithari blockaded the Morellian supply lanes. Even species that had never fought before began arming their fleets just in case. The galaxy was not at war yet, but it was dressing for it. Vrel sat alone in the empty council chamber one night, staring at the darkened human seats. He remembered the last time he had spoken with Ambassador Cole. They had shared a drink, a human whiskey that burned like fire but left a warmth behind. Cole had said, "You aliens think peace is a treaty. We think it's a habit. And habits take time to build." Vrel finally understood what he meant. Peace wasn't something you signed. It was something you practiced every day, even when it was hard. On Earth, shipyards buzzed with quiet activity. Not warships, never warships, but deep space construction platforms, medical outposts, and mobile research labs. The Interstellar Civil Corps expanded its training programs. Engineers, doctors, teachers, and farmers signed up in record numbers. No one spoke of conquest or glory. They spoke of service, of building, of being ready when the galaxy finally asked for help the right way. In a hidden facility beneath the ice of Europa, scientists tested new jump drive stabilizers that required no external beacons. On Mars, former diplomats now taught courses in xenopsychology and conflict resolution to young recruits. Earth was not hiding. It was preparing, not for war, but for the day the galaxy might finally be ready to learn. Meanwhile, the Drath fleet continued its advance. Warlord Kor believed the Cathari would surrender without a fight. He did not know that Earth had quietly installed autonomous defense platforms along key trade corridors years ago. Silent, unmarked, and programmed only to activate if peaceful worlds were threatened. The platforms had never fired a shot, but they were watching. On Aurora Station, Chloe received a strange signal, a faint ping from a derelict relay near the Helios Rift. It wasn't human. It wasn't Cathari either. She traced its origin and found it matched no known species. She flagged it for review but didn't report it to the council. She no longer trusted them with Earth's secrets. In Denver, President Hartley met with Lena Ortiz and Marcus Boone in a small office with no windows. "How long before they realize we never really left?" Ortiz asked. Boone answered before Hartley could. "They'll realize it when they need us most, and not a moment sooner." Hartley nodded. "Let them learn. Let them fail. And when they're ready to try again, we'll be there, not as saviors, but as neighbors. Far away, on a dying world with poisoned skies." A Xanthari child looked up at the stars and whispered a name she had heard in old broadcasts. Earth. She did not know if anyone would hear her. But somewhere in the silent dark, a dormant satellite stirred, just slightly as if remembering its purpose. Humans withdraw from diplomacy. throwing the Galactic Council into panic. Part 4. The Drath fleet arrived at the Cathari border world of Tarsus under cover of a solar flare. Warlord Kor believed the element of surprise would guarantee victory. The Cathari had no standing army to speak of, only civilian defense drones and outdated patrol cutters. Without human peacekeepers to enforce the old treaties, Tarsus was defenseless, or so the Drath thought. As the first wave of Drath warships entered orbit, they sent a standard demand for surrender. No reply came. The planet's comms were silent. Kor ordered his fleet to begin orbital bombardment. The moment the first plasma charge left the launch bay, something changed. From the shadow of a nearby asteroid, 3 sleek, unmarked platforms powered to life. They bore no insignia, no transponder codes, no hails. They simply moved, fast, precise, and utterly silent. Within seconds, they locked onto the Drath command vessel and fired a single pulse. Not a weapon of destruction, but a targeted electromagnetic surge that fried every navigation and weapon system on board. The ship went dark, drifting helplessly. Before the Drath could react, 2 more platforms emerged from the rings of Tarsus's moon. They disabled 3 more warships with the same surgical precision. No explosions, no debris, just sudden total silence from the attackers. Kor roared in fury, demanding answers. His science officer scanned the platforms frantically. "They're using human quantum shielding," he stammered. "But the design is not from any known Earth fleet." The truth dawned on Kor too late. Earth had not abandoned the galaxy. It had simply stopped announcing its presence. On Xylos Prime, the news arrived in fragments. A Cathari distress call, a garbled Drath transmission, then silence. Counselor Vrel was the first to piece it together. He pulled up old trade records and found that for years, human freighters had delivered civilian infrastructure modules to remote systems, asteroid outposts, deep space relays, even terraforming stations. At the time, no one questioned it. Now Vrel realized those modules were never just for building. They were for watching, for protecting. He called an emergency session, his voice shaking with urgency. Earth never left, he told the stunned council. They embedded guardians across the galaxy, silent, automatic, and neutral. They only act when innocent lives are threatened. The room erupted. Some called it a violation of sovereignty. Others called it salvation. The Orlani representative wept openly. "They protected us without asking for thanks," she whispered. On Earth, no one celebrated. In the command center beneath Cheyenne Mountain, President Hartley watched the battle data stream in. The platforms had done exactly what they were programmed to do: neutralize aggression without escalating violence. No lives were lost. No cities destroyed. Just a clear message: harm the helpless and you will be stopped. Lena Ortiz stood beside him, arms crossed. "They'll call it interference," Hartley shook his head. "They'll call it many things. But they'll also remember that we didn't fire a single shot in anger. We just drew a line," Marcus Boone added quietly. "And lines are meant to be respected, not tested." On Aurora Station, Chloe Bennett monitored the aftermath. The Drath fleet had retreated in disarray, half its ships disabled but intact. The Cathari were already sending repair teams to help. She replayed the engagement footage again and again. The platforms moved like ghosts, efficient, calm, and utterly in control. She recognized the design philosophy. It was pure human engineering. Solve the problem, not the enemy. She called Raymond Cole. When his face appeared, she didn't need to speak. He had seen the news too. "They finally understand," he said. "Earth doesn't need to shout to be heard." Back on Tarsus, Cathari civilians emerged from shelters, blinking in the sunlight. They looked up at the sky, expecting smoke and fire. Instead, they saw only quiet stars and the faint glint of distant platforms holding position. No one knew who had saved them, but they knew who had cared enough to leave protectors behind. In Denver, Natalie Ruiz's students watched the news in silence. One girl raised her hand. "Does this mean we're going back to the council?" Natalie shook her head. "It means the council has to decide if they want peace enough to earn it." On Mars, former diplomats trained new recruits in nonviolent crisis response. On Europa, engineers refined the next generation of Guardian platforms, smaller, smarter, and even quieter. Earth was not returning to the old ways. It was building new ones. Warlord Kor returned to Drath space humiliated. His council demanded answers. He had none. All he knew was that the humans had not fired a weapon, yet they had defeated him completely. He ordered his scientists to study the disabled platforms, but every attempt to access their systems triggered a data wipe. Nothing remained but empty shells and unanswered questions. Vrel, meanwhile, compiled a full report for the Council. He titled it simply, The Earth Doctrine. In it, he wrote that humanity's strength was not in its weapons or its ships, but in its refusal to let cruelty go unchallenged, even from a distance. He urged the Council to adopt a new principle: protect the weak, not because it is profitable, but because it is right. Some laughed. Others listened. But for the first time in months, the chamber was quiet, not from fear, but from thought. Far from all of it, in the cold void between stars, a single Guardian platform powered down its weapons and returned to standby mode. Its job was done. It would wait, silent and patient, for the next time the galaxy forgot what peace truly meant. And somewhere on Earth, a child looked up at the night sky and whispered, "Thank you," not knowing if anyone would hear, but hoping someone would. Humans withdraw from diplomacy, throwing the Galactic Council into panic. Part 5. The petition arrived at Earth's outer defense perimeter, wrapped in diplomatic encryption, a first in over a year. It carried the signatures of every major species in the Galactic Council, even the Drath. The message was simple. We ask for guidance, not intervention. We ask to learn, not to demand. We are ready to listen. Earth did not reply immediately. For 3 full cycles, the message floated in the silent space near Luna. Unanswered, the galaxy held its breath. Some feared rejection. Others feared silence would continue forever. But on the 4th day, a single ship detached from the orbital docks above Mars and set a course for Xylos Prime. It was not a warship, not a carrier, not even a flagship. It was the CSS Resolute, a mid-sized science and observation vessel, crewed by fewer than 50 souls. At its helm was Captain Eli Dawson, a quiet man with steady hands and a reputation for calm under pressure. Beside him stood Science Officer Priya Nair, whose work on interspecies communication had once been dismissed as too idealistic. Now her theories were about to be tested on the grandest stage. When the Resolute arrived at Xylos Prime, the council chamber was packed. Delegates from every corner of known space stood as the human vessel docked. No fanfare, no speeches, just 2 humans walking into the amphitheater where their people had once sat in silence. Councillor Vrel stepped forward first. He bowed slightly, a gesture rarely seen among his kind. "You came," he said. Eli nodded. "We did." Priya carried a small data core in her hand. She placed it gently on the central podium. "This is not a treaty," she said. "It is a library. It contains everything from human history. Our wars, our mistakes, our recoveries, our philosophies, our methods for resolving conflict without bloodshed. We offer it not as a rule book, but as a starting point." The chamber was utterly still. No one moved. No one spoke. They had expected demands, ultimatums, conditions. Instead, they received an open hand. Vrel reached out and touched the data core. "Why now?" Eli looked around the room, meeting the eyes of beings he had only read about. "Because you stopped asking what we could do for you, and started asking what you could become with us. That's the moment we were waiting for." Back on Earth, President Hartley watched the live feed from his office in Denver. Lena Ortiz stood beside him, arms uncrossed for the first time in months. "They'll misuse it," she said softly. "Some of them will twist those teachings into weapons." Hartley nodded. "Maybe, but others will build something better, and that's enough." On Aurora Station, Chloe Bennett watched with Raymond Cole beside her on the screen. He wiped his eyes without shame. "They finally got it," he said. "Peace isn't given. It's grown." The council spent weeks studying the data core. They argued over interpretations, debated ethics, and for the first time, listened to each other without shouting. The Orlani proposed a new framework based on mutual care. The Cathari offered to host training centers for nonviolent conflict resolution. Even the Drath sent observers, silent, watchful, but present. They called it the Earth Accords. Not because Earth wrote the rules, but because Earth reminded them that peace begins with respect, not power. The Resolute stayed at Xylos Prime for only 3 days. On the morning of the 4th, Eli and Priya boarded their ship and prepared to leave. Frill met them at the airlock. Will you return? He asked. Priya smiled. We never really left. We just waited for you to look up. As the Resolute lifted off, the entire council stood in silence. No cheers, no applause, just quiet gratitude. Frill watched the ship vanish into the stars and whispered words that would soon spread across 1,000 worlds. They didn't abandon us. They trusted us to catch up. On Earth, life continued as it always had. In Montana, Natalie Ruiz taught her students about responsibility again. This time she added a new line. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is believe in others enough to let them fail, and still be there when they rise. Her students wrote it down. Some would carry those words into careers in science, medicine, or teaching. Others would join the Civil Corps and travel to distant worlds not to rule but to help. None of them knew they were part of something larger. They only knew they wanted to make things better. In Cheyenne Mountain, Hartley signed a new order. Reactivate diplomatic channels, but only for those who had signed the Earth Accords. No exceptions. No shortcuts. The galaxy would earn its way back into humanity's trust, one honest act at a time. On Mars, engineers began designing the next generation of civilian outposts, this time with open invitations for alien partners to co-build and co-manage. On Europa, Guardian platforms received updated protocols, stand down in systems that adopted the Accords. Let peace prove itself. Far away on the once-dying world of Corrales, Xanthari children played under clear skies. Their atmospheric processors hummed steadily, now maintained by local engineers trained with human schematics released freely into the public domain. A little girl looked up and pointed to a passing ship with Earth markings. "That's the one that saved us," she said. Her teacher corrected her gently. "No, that's the one that believed we could save ourselves." And in the endless dark between stars, the last Guardian platform powered down its sensors for the final time. Its mission was complete. The galaxy had remembered how to care. On Earth, under open skies and quiet stars, children laughed, farmers worked, and teachers taught. They did not celebrate. They did not boast. They simply lived, knowing that by choosing to walk away, they had given the galaxy the greatest gift of all, the chance to grow up.